Welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, we'll be discussing the past perfect continuous tense. Now, what is this tense about? If any action has started in the past, continued for some time in the past, and completed or finished in the past, in that particular instance, we'll be using the past perfect continuous tense. Now, this past perfect continuous tense can also be called as the past perfect progressive tense. So generally, continuous tense is the progressive tense. For example, present continuous tense can also be called as present progressive tense. Past continuous tense can also be called as past progressive tense. Now, let's look into the past perfect progressive tense with the structure and with certain examples. See the structure here. Subject plus had been plus V1 plus ing plus objective plus for or since plus time frame we have over there. Now, let's see the subject here. So see the subject here. We have I, the first person singular. Next we have we, that is the first person plural. Next you, that is altogether the second person singular and plural. He, she, it, third person singular. They is third person plural. And next we have Ramu, Alex, any name that can be considered as the third person singular over there. With these subjects, now what should be the auxiliary verb that should come here? For example, here had plus been plus V1 plus ing has been written over here. Now, from where this had has come, we learn the past perfect tense. In the past perfect tense, the auxiliary verb or the helping verb was had, and next for the continuous tense, the main verb was V1 plus ing or present participle or V4. Now, had has been taken from the past perfect tense and V1 plus ing has been taken from the continuous tense, and in between been has been added over there. With this particular structure, now we'll be making certain examples. So, for example, I said Sachin had been playing cricket for 20 years. Here Sachin had been playing cricket for 20 years, I said. I have used had been playing, and at the same time I have used the word called as for, F-O-R. Now, generally for the present perfect continuous tense, past perfect continuous tense and future perfect continuous tense, we have the clue words like for and since. Now, where do we use this for and since? For example, for can be used for period of time and since can be used for the point of time. Now here 20 years is the period of time over there. That means here in this example, it's not mentioned very clearly which 20 years it is. Is it in 1980 or 1950 or 2020? They haven't mentioned which 20 years exactly over there. Now here I'm using for. So it is the period of time. It's not the exact point of time. If exact point of time is given, then we'll be using since over there. Now let's look into an example with since in the example. For example, I said he had been waiting in the veranda since morning here. Now here we have the word or the clue word called as since. Now what is this since here? Since is altogether the point of time. So morning. So morning means it's today morning, that's it. Okay, it's exactly they have mentioned it's morning. Now we are using since over there. In order to get clarity regarding this since and for, where to use, we'll discuss them in detail now. Now let's understand where we generally use since or for. Since is used for the time frame where you are mentioning exact time or point of time. For example, he had been waiting for you since 10 a.m. That means very specific I am mentioning over there. We had been celebrating Independence Day since 1947. Very specific. 1947 is very specific over there. Whenever if there is any specific time in that particular instance, we'll be using the since over there. Now let's look into this. Days before days, for example, since Monday, since Tuesday, since Wednesday. Next we have dates, since 15th of August, since 26th of January. Next, since January, since February. Next, years, we have since 2020, since 2005. Next we have clock time, that is since 10 o'clock, since 11 o'clock, since 12 o'clock, something like that. Next we have part of each day, that is since morning, since evening, since last night. Next we have stages of life. For example, since childhood, since adolescence, since adulthood. In this fashion, we'll be using since, where it mentions exact time over there or specific point of time. Now let's look into for. For example, for can be used for duration of time or period of time or total time. Here specificity would not be there. Okay, for example, I said we had been staying in Mumbai for the last 20 years. And when I said for the last 20 years here, I'm not specially mentioning which 20 years it is. Is it 1950 20 years or 1930 20 years or 2020 20 years? I haven't mentioned which time it is. So in this particular context, we'll be using for over there. Okay, so duration we'll be mentioning over there. For the last 30 years, 30 years is the duration. Next we have the total time. The total time is 30 years over there. For the last 30 years is the total time is the 30 years over there. Next we have the period of time from 1 to 30 years. That's altogether the period of time over there. Now finally, since is very specific, but for is not that specific. So this is how we generally use since or for. If a sentence has two parts, the first part will be writing it as the past perfect continuous tense. But how do we write the second part? Now in order to write the second part, we'll be converting that sentence into the simple past tense. So let's look into that. The first part of the sentence should be in the past perfect continuous tense and the second part should be in the simple past tense. So based on this particular structure, let's solve these questions. Now see the first question here. He had been looked for the wallet for 2 hours and then he found it in the garden. So this is a question. Now here we need to find the error. But before finding the error, let's understand here the first part of the sentence. He had been looked for the wallet for 2 hours. That is the first part of the sentence, which is in past perfect continuous tense, and the second part of the sentence, and then he found it in the garden. That's the second part. Now the second part of the sentence is in the simple past tense. Let's solve this question. He had been looked. So it's very simple. Looked should be made into looking. Looking is the right answer over here. So now remove this V3 and place V4 over here. Now here we have the word called as looked. So let's understand some of the words which are very similar to look. For example, I said stare. What is stare? For example, if you're looking some person continuously, then that is called as staring. Next we have the word called as peep. What is peeping? Peeping is if there is a small hole and if you're seeing from the small hole into the other side, that is called as the peeping. Next we have the word called as glance and glimpse. Now what is this glance and glimpse? Glance and glimpse is nothing but just having a look on the other side and just coming back to your original position in this fashion. Okay, glimpse is a quick short look. Glimpse and glance can be a very quick short look that we are generally calling it as the glimpse and the glance. Now what is glare? Okay, we have one more word called as the glare over here. Now what is this glare? Glare is nothing but seeing someone very angrily continuously. Seeing angrily someone continuously, that we are calling with what name? Glare. G-L-A-R-E, glare. Now these are the words pertaining to look. Okay, more or all these words have the same meaning. Now see the second question. The train had been moving after being dashed for 2 years. Now see here, the train had been moving. Okay, so this is in the past perfect continuous tense. After being dashed for 2 years. Now we have the option here stationary and stationary. So we have two options over here, option 1 and option 2. Out of these two options, which is the right answer over there? We need to just check it out. Now here, understand the meaning for the first one. Stationary, N-A-R-Y, that is altogether something which is constant for certain time. That is stationary. Next we have stationery. Stationery is altogether a shop where books, pens, all these are sold. That is stationery. Okay, second one is a place where books are sold, and the first one is altogether which is not moving, stationary. Now here, for this particular question, is it option 1 or 2? That's altogether option 1. Now see the third question. How long were you learning Sanskrit? Now, whenever any interrogative question is given, generally in the perfect continuous tenses, how long would be the question where with that we'll be in a position to form a sentence, a interrogative sentence. Okay, we'll discuss the interrogative, positive sentence, negative sentence, interrogative and negative interrogative sentences in the coming videos. Okay, part 2, part 3 and all. Now here, how long were you learning Sanskrit? That means here, had you been, had you, has you, and no improvement. So here we have option C. Instead of where you, make it as option C. That is altogether had you been. Now see the fourth question. They had been dash for an hour before Sachin arrived. Now here we have waiting, waited, waits and wait. So we have 4 options over here. Out of these 4 options, which is the right answer over here? That is altogether had been. After had been, what should come? The V4 should come. That is altogether option A. That's nothing but waiting over there. Okay.